Gail and I are really excited to have this green initiatives on Main Street. This is something that I know our communities have wanted more information on over these last couple of years that we've been doing these webinars, and so we're really excited to do actually an extended version of this. And so normally these mornings on Mains are 1 hour long, and the material is so great that we're going to have 2 hours worth of material that we're going to be going over. And so you're going to hear a lot of different ways that green initiatives can be said and explained. So there's a lot of different um, meanings of what green initiatives actually means, and so you're going to hear all of that here today. And so we're really excited to bring this material to you. So just as a reminder, all attendees are coming in on listen only mode. And so if you talk, we won't be able to hear, but we do encourage you to use that Q&A, that chat function in there. We're going to have 3 different speakers here, which we'll be talking about here in a little bit. And we're going to take questions at the end of each one of those presentations. And so feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will get to them at the end of those presentations, as well as we're going to have some time for some Q&A at the end, theoretically, depending on where our time is at. So feel free to ask those questions along the way, and we will get to them. You can change your audio functionality from your phone to your computer and vice versa. And like I said, type your questions. And if we don't have time to get to your questions, you can email my coworker Keith. You can see his information here on the screen, or you can email me directly, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered after the fact. So I wanted to do a couple of commercials before we actually get into the webinar itself. First, our registration is live for our next state conference in St. Charles, July 22nd through 24th. Get your kicks on Main Street. We're really excited for it and planning for it. We're actually going to be in the office planning for it a lot next week. And so we're really excited to be able to show off one of the premier Main Streets in Missouri. In St. Charles, we're going to get a lot of time to shop and dine and explore downtown
and
learn exactly. Yeah, this network and all
and
of
learn.
the buzzwords that you can use there.
We always have fun learning, though. That's what
right.
it is.
Yeah, those are synonymous, right? So the registration is live for this, and so if you go on our website, you can sign up for it. The early bird does end on July 1st, and so make sure to get your registration in before that. Make sure to get those volunteers and directors if you have them. City people, we encourage any and all people to come to this. We're going to have a diverse set of topics that we're really excited to bring to you. And then just some upcoming things before our state conference. We will actually have another webinar next week. We're going to be doing that with the state coordinator from Alabama, all about mastering project management. And so it'll be some action planning, but also what do you do from beginning to end, and what does success look like when it comes to project management in the Main Street world. And so this is, again, part of that, our series on building the capacity of the organization. And so this is one of those essential tasks that strong Main Street organizations and successful Main Street organizations have mastered. And so we're happy to bring that material to you. And I'll talk about it a little bit at the end, but May 21st to the 22nd is Main Street Summit. And so this will be in our office in Branson. And so again, this is all focused on capacity building, but also building or building on existing partnerships or building new partnerships with the city and other organizations in your community. And really just trying to build up the organization and build up just what strong downtown revitalization looks like. And so again, one of those initiatives that we're trying to build the capacity of the organization and just build up the downtown itself, and what is everyone's role in that downtown revitalization. And then we have our next mornings on Main on June 4th. This is all on insurance and disaster preparedness. And so feel free to sign up for that. These are all on a website for you to sign up for as well. These are all Zoom, except for the Main Street Summit, all Zoom webinars. And then for any of those new communities that have not does not have a Main Street program in their community yet, we do have a community empowerment grant workshop in Jefferson City. It's free to attend. You'll learn about the Main Street approach and the service grant that we offer to create a new Main Street organization and go through that planning process using the community as our guide for that. So I'm going to turn it over to Gayla to talk a little bit about our panelists.
Hey, well, good morning, everyone. We're, as has been said many times, we're really thrilled to have 3 experts with us today. And we're going to kick it off here in a little bit with Amy, but Larry Lucas is the Main Street architect for Colorado Main Street program, and I'll go more in depth on each one of them before their presentation. And then we have Carolina Neal, and she's the co-owner of Neal Group's Construction in Joplin. But we are going to kick it off with Amy. So we're excited that Amy's with us. Amy serves as the program officer for Main Street America. Amy is responsible for delivering and expanding the reach of the technical assistance and consulting services for the network. Communities and other departments across the country. And Amy is skilled at developing public-private partnerships and building the toolbox and helps the private sector be successful. Yay, we all need that. She understands that creativity, patience, we all need that as well. Persistence, that economic development in the context of historic preservation and what is required. Miller's collaborative work, including planning and implementing a $4 million park expansion in the heart of downtown Elgin with public art and diverse accessibilities and playground. So that is the reason we have Amy with us today. So we're going to kick it off to you, Amy.
You're on mute.
Good morning, y'all. Hey, so Ben, do things look good?
Look great.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks so much for that introduction. I am glad to be here this morning sharing our green initiatives perspective for Main Street. And on my part, I am going to start with just a little overview of what the Main Street program includes. And so you guys, Missouri and all the Main Street communities are part of this nationwide team of implementation. We have 42 states that participate and well over 2,000 communities that are part of the Main Street movement, a tried and true business model that started with Mary Means in the late 1970s and has grown to tremendous heights. We are glad to have you all with us working together to implement this balanced approach where green initiatives are part of all 4 of the points. So design, economic vitality, promotion, and organization. As we go through our presentations today with all our presenters, you'll see the connections in all these areas for green initiatives with your communities. A little reminder for all of us that as Main Street America members, you guys have access to the Knowledge Hub, professional development opportunities, great virtual networking and information sharing with To The Point, field services, which is things like this webinar or various transformation strategies workshops and other technical training that we can work with you on in person through your coordinating program in Missouri. There are grant opportunities, and there's insurance coverage, which I'm just going to briefly talk about. Glad to hear that you guys have a detailed dive into this. But the National Trust for Insurance Services is a subsidiary of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and they specialize in insurance for historic properties, whether those are commercial or residential. And they also offer all sorts of things that are beneficial to organizations like event insurance or liquor liability insurance, board of directors insurance, insurance. And they are focused on helping you reduce your risks and mitigate your hazards as you are dealing with historic properties and the organizations that support historic districts. So encourage you to check them out if you're not finding what you need locally. And so we're a team working together, the local programs, the Missouri Coordinating Program, and Main Street America. You guys are doing outstanding work in Missouri. Just since 2006, 1.4 billion in public-private reinvestment, 1,443 net new businesses, over 6,200 new jobs, and over 750,000 volunteer hours. It is a tremendous, the success of Main Street throughout the state of Missouri. Today, we are going to talk about buildings, creating a toolbox to support the private sector, trees, small projects, events, parks, recreation areas, and community engagement, and all of these things through the lens of green initiatives for downtown. So a downtown district, any commercial business area, suffers from something called the heat island effect and is naturally hotter because of all the pavement and the buildings and the concrete that traps heat and makes that district hotter, which during our summer months is even more noticeable and has an even greater negative impact on visitation and length of stays downtown. The benefits of implementing green initiatives include reducing those temperatures, economic development benefits, reducing traffic noise, supporting pollinators, improving health, and just generally building community for the places we love. At our core, the Main Street program is about buildings. We are doing economic development in the context of historic preservation. And through the 4-point approach, we can sustainably revitalize historic commercial districts for long-term sustainability. These buildings have built-in energy efficiencies that you're going to hear more about from the rest of our panelists, but definitely wanted to acknowledge that this is our foundation. Our work supports economic vitality with this toolbox that we're going to talk about this morning. We are supporting the private sector with any number of types of assistance programs, policies, and educational efforts. On our part, if we can do something like adopting the existing building code or flexible performance-based building and energy codes, if your community is interested in that, simply offering technical assistance, providing incentives, providing excellent education for property and business owners, and supporting the balance of residential, office, retail, and service businesses throughout your downtown. These are all things that you can work with your municipality to help put in place. And in some cases, your organization independently is the lead, perhaps for those educational programs, helping people understand the value of the building, the inherent energy efficiencies it has, the merits of preserving historic windows, all those sorts of things land more squarely in your end of the court, where something like the building codes is certainly a cooperative effort with your city. The local Main Street program is an advocate, and so working with the city to help that building permit department, the planning and development services departments understand the work that you're doing and the challenges that our property owners face is a great role for the Main Street program. When we look at our toolbox, we will talk today about solar panels, tax credits, stormwater detention, paving options, and a number of things. But first, I'm going to mention solar panels. So these are allowed in historic districts, and the Secretary of the Interior has a historic preservation standards one-pager that is very helpful. The short version is solar panels typically go on the roof of historic buildings. They do need to not be visible on the historic exterior, but you can have them. And in some communities, solar has been taken on as an overall community initiative. North Vernon, Indiana, made a citywide commitment to solar starting in 2017, and they have literally added 7,000 solar panels throughout their community at 24 different locations, and are now calling themselves the Solar City. They also did things like LED streetlights, and so whatever the range tied to solar that you might be looking at, there are definitely opportunities that connect for the historic district. Historic tax credits are an excellent way to make a project more financially doable. Vacancies are opportunities. And when we have, as you all do in your case, you have state and federal tax credits, a 25% state credit, 35% possible in Kansas City and the St. Louis City area, and then 20% with the federal program. So when you're helping a property owner see that opportunity of a 45% reimbursement on the majority of their improvement investment, that can be something that really makes a big difference financially. As local staff, as you're helping property owners understand how that process works to participate in the tax credits program, the financial impact of it, the preservation requirements associated with it, you're also able to be an advocate with the state program and the National Park Service, where you can be helping that project navigate its way through those systems and making sure that the communication is flowing. It's a good opportunity for you to encourage them to consider a property consultant or an accountant for those. They are definitely complicated projects, especially depending on the scale. And so those are all resources that you at the local level can bring to the table, helping investment move forward and helping reinvestment be able to move forward as well. When we look at detention and paving options, this is another partnership with your municipality. Dealing with stormwater detention is a fact of life. The rules in many cities don't have a lot of consideration for a historic district and the limitations that you might be dealing with in terms of simply the area where you can address it. So if you're able to work with your municipality to come up with some new options, perhaps different paving options, the whole commercial code may not allow for pavers or crushed granite or permeable pavement options. But if the historic district, if your Main Street district can be a pilot program, or it could be a special district to allow those sorts of paving options, combined with rainwater collection and rain gardens or biodetention options, you can really mitigate surface runoff. And rather than the chain link fence uninspired pit on the right, you can have a really beautiful addition to the downtown and a smaller amount of stormwater detention area being required of the property owner, also helping them maximize what they're able to do with their building. Rainwater collection can also be really helpful just with an existing building, as you're always wanting to move that water away from the building, and the gutters on the back, rather than pooling near the alley, can be a collection that gets used for other beautification efforts. Western Union, Iowa is an example we're going to use to talk about municipal infrastructure. So the municipality is the entity that's the lead in doing these major streetscape projects in our communities. But the theme of the work and how well it connects to and facilitates the redevelopment of the downtown district is very much Main Street's flag to carry and to help influence. This example from Western Union, Iowa, they became a Main Street city in 2006. In 2008, they were designated a green pilot community by the state of Iowa. And since 2010, they have implemented a $10 million green streetscape project. They did 4.4 acres of permeable pavers. They have bioretention areas. They used LED streetlights. Their community Main Street reinvestment statistics are that they've got about 11.5 million in private sector reinvestment, 28 new businesses, 42,000 volunteer hours. And they have, in addition to the overall streetscape work, they've created a plaza that supports events and community gathering space. And the example here is to remind us that streetscape projects are long-term. They require advanced planning and are phased in over a period of years, requiring multiple funding sources to implement. But within them, there are lots of opportunities to include green initiatives that support the district's long-term sustainability. Another tool for you to look at with your municipalities is how you manage the sidewalks. So how can the private sector utilize public space for their private benefit? The sidewalk is public space. And when you develop a sidewalk dining ordinance with your municipality, you'll be able to address things like how much space can be used for sidewalk dining. What does the furniture associated with that look like? How is it cleaned? What is the maintenance associated with it? And how often do those permits get reviewed? Ultimately, you are creating more selling space for the business. Yes, more opportunity for their customers to be able to use the inside as well as the outside of the building. But you're also creating opportunities in the district overall for folks to stay longer and ultimately spend more in the district. And that's beneficial to everybody. It certainly adds an overall vibrancy to the district overall. And sidewalk displays are another element that municipalities can manage with a separate ordinance that looks at how can items be displayed outside of business, when, for how long, how much space can they use for that. When you work with your new municipality to get these things put into place, you are simply making it easier for the private sector to know what their opportunities are and to have that consistency that they are looking for that supports their implementation. And so now we're going to talk about trees. In the first large-scale study to be done that was specifically trying to tie tree canopy to health in a local community. The results have just come out. This is a partnership with the Nature Conservancy. And so this large-scale study started in 2020, where they planted 8,000 trees in a 4 square mile area and recruited 750 residents to participate in a health monitoring aspect of the study, where they were specifically looking at, does this improvement in tree canopy impact health? And now they have initial results that support a reduction in heart disease, stroke, and some types of cancers because of how the trees impact the air quality in that area. So when do you plant trees? Whether you're planting 8,000 or a few, you need to be sure you're planting them at the right time of year. So our image on the left shows that in Kentucky, they were doing that in the winter to give those trees the longest, the best run at sustainability. The picture on the right is talking about not just where the trees were planted, but how. And so one example they used is that along major roadways and highways, if trees are planted from short, medium to tall, getting taller as they get closer to the neighborhood, they literally direct that exhaust polluted air from the highway up and over the neighborhoods, rather than with just a wall, the air stagnates in the neighborhood. When we're looking at the types of trees, you want to be sure that you're planting for your your area, that you're using trees and shrubs, et cetera, that are readily available at your local nursery. You want to do planting that is indigenous and has the ecological zone for where you are. You can do a soil check thanks to your Missouri Department of Conservation and the Natural Resources Conservation Service. They'll test soil for you to help you see if what adjustments might need to be made to help what you're planting thrive. You want to be sure that you do a variety of things. All one tree might look pretty and feel unifying, but that's going to set you up for potentially losing all of those trees to a disease at a point in the future, all at the same time. Lubbock, Texas, is an example of they planted all elm trees, and Dutch elm disease took out all of those trees. So consider variety. And when you're doing pruning of trees and shrubs, you might be surprised at your local volunteer expertise related to this, but consider working with a horticulturalist or an arborist to make sure that things are being trimmed and managed properly. And then when we're doing shrubs, we also want to make sure that we are cautious about spiny and pokey plants, unless your objective is to say, stay out. We don't want to make the primary areas along our sidewalks, et cetera, a plant dangerous zone. So let's look at connectivity. We can create connections mid-block between streets and alleys, creating areas to rest, functional space to linger downtown, again, extending those visits, giving a break from the heat, allowing you to stay downtown longer. Add some bike racks and you encourage cycling and a proper place to store those bikes. And sometimes making a vacant lot into a parklet is a great way to activate a space and provide amenities for downtown. Creating those mid-block connections, either through a vacant lot or through doing this type of improvement in an alley, can be really helpful to activating the rear, which is something we're going to get to in a minute, and just in terms of giving folks an option. If you have really long blocks, that can be a bit of a challenge. We wanted to highlight Liberty, an accredited Main Street program in Missouri, for the Mill Street project and its work in connectivity. So in Liberty, they have a downtown district that straddles the highway with events and event space and businesses on one side of the highway versus the other side of the highway that has a volume of other downtown businesses. They used a $10,000 grant through AARP from the Missouri Main Street program to look at traffic calming measures. And so what you see here in the pictures are their temporary installations to help people visualize as well as try out what these traffic calming measures would look like, what it would feel like, how it would work with the traffic, and obviously vehicles still continuing to get to where they need to be, but creating a place for pedestrians and creating opportunities to slow things down a little bit. They have been able to, from this grant, implement some of these traffic calming measures in a permanent way and improve that connectivity for both sides of their district. In your community, you may be able to work with your municipality and MDOT to develop truck routes that would mitigate noise and reduce the number of large vehicles downtown. And that might be an easier place to start as you work towards larger, more permanent impacts like what they're putting into place in Liberty. When we look at beautification, we certainly start with businesses adding potted plants, encouraging them to do that, maybe even including that in one of your assistance programs to facilitate them doing it. As a district, utilizing self-watering planters so that you can create greenery throughout the district. When you can work with your municipality to help you with the some of the watering aspects related to those self-watering planters. Asking the city to look at how they can screen city-owned lots if they have lots in the downtown district that are either for parking or perhaps for city-related business. There are opportunities there to green things up. When you are doing regular litter cleanup and beautification days, to involve volunteers in your downtown district, helping you with planting areas and keeping the whole district, alleys, streets, everything cleaner on a regular basis. It's a wonderful way to engage folks directly in green initiatives for your downtown. We're going to look more closely at consolidated trash collection, alley activation, community gardens, and vacant lots. So alleys. Alleys are functional at the beginning. Trash collection is one of their primary purposes. But what if the trash could be consolidated into one central dumpster or a limited number of centrally located dumpsters? Then you would have the space on the right. And what could you do there that would increase the possibilities associated with your properties and how your buildings are revitalized and redeveloped, as well as how you are implementing downtown development throughout your program. So perhaps the business tenant can use that rear space behind the building before the alley to extend their sales floor, to create more seating. The courtyard on the left is associated with a wine bar and home goods decor store. Maybe it's an overall apartment building that creates space for the folks who live there to have some community space with a small patio area. Maybe opening up those alleys allows you to activate the rear of your properties with apartments, and they are able to create a little courtyard space for the rear apartment entrance, while the business still has its entrance at the front of the buildings. And you create a great opportunity for events and hosting activities in the alley, allowing you to keep those major streets and the access to businesses open, and great opportunities for public art. This particular example is from Ottumwa, Iowa. It's called Canteen Alley, and it's named for an iconic business, the Canteen, that opened in 1927. They are famous for scrambled hamburgers, and it is quite the local odyssey to get to participate in this tiny diner to have these scrambled burgers, but you can only access it from the alley. And so as Ottumwa has made improvements to that alley to make it more pedestrian friendly, this public art is actually functional rain gutters, and the ones on the left make music when the rainwater goes through them. In Lee's Summit, Missouri, an accredited Main Street city and a GAMSA winner, we wanted to look at this alley activation. So here, this alley is adjacent to the Main Street office for Lee's Summit. And they used temporary events to see how the space could be activated. And this ultimately resulted in overall beautification and making this a regular event space and a much more pleasant pedestrian thoroughfare. Lots of opportunities related to alleys and activating our alleys. Community gardens. So even though you live downtown in an apartment, you could be somebody who doesn't want a garden, and that's why you live in an apartment. But you might also be somebody who is an avid gardener and wants to be able to garden and would appreciate being able to participate in a community space like the one on the left, which is a buffer between on-street parking and overall public parking in a downtown district. This entire area is maintained and managed by volunteers and creates beautiful space. It's all about pollinators and blooming color year round and making the space enjoyable for everyone in the district, but it is particularly managed by the folks who live within a block of it. The other side of community gardens is what you may more traditionally think of, the idea of growing produce and families being able to have their own plot or managing an area overall for produce that's just used personally or shared with a food cupboard. Certainly, community garden programs can be wonderful youth development initiatives. And the St. Louis Sweet Potato Project is one that we highlighted here for its impact on involving youth and helping them develop long-term leadership and entrepreneurial skills. So now let's move to vacant lots. Vacant lots can be screened, but they can also be activated, creating community space that is manageable maintenance and builds community pride. This is another example from St. Louis, the Sunflower Project, and in their work with this vacant lot, they have implemented it so that it is maintained and filled with community pride year-round and is useful for this neighborhood and this commercial district 12 months a year. Very low impact, manageable cost associated with how they have implemented this. Farmers markets. So farmers markets build community, they provide access to fresh local foods, and they are a business incubator. When you look at food production, creates jobs and sustainable businesses on Main Street. For example, a food production company, a beef jerky maker, ATX Jerky in Texas grew from home-based production, selling at farmers markets, to a building downtown with a retail storefront. And bakeries are a great example of starting at a farmer's market, being able to grow to commercial kitchen space by the hour, ultimately renting space in a building downtown where they have their own kitchen and growing to be able to invest in that property themselves. Food trucks are another great example of being able to grow into permanent space, creating a pipeline of businesses for your downtown with a green, sustainable element to them. Events. Green themed events can be produced by partners. They don't have to be produced by the Main Street program. Part of what you can do is look at your Parks and Recreation Department, your library, garden clubs, nonprofit groups, folks who are already producing events that fit with your theme, and inviting them to come do those events in downtown, bringing their customer base and diversifying what you're able to offer in the downtown district. As we think about events in general, whether we're especially ones that we are producing, it is a good time to think about cooling and warming stations, depending on the time of year, so that, again, you are extending the time that people are spending at the event and in your downtown district. Recreation areas. So I know that Missouri has a great variety of natural opportunities to enjoy your state. And this is a chance for you to look at, is your downtown adjacent to one of those recreation areas? In this example, in Georgetown, Texas, literally this blue hole recreational area is right next to downtown. It is easily walkable and today has a limited connection, but not one that's terribly pedestrian friendly. Their downtown master plan recommended improvements to Blue Hole Park to make it more oriented to being able to stay and hang out, do bird watching, just enjoy being by the river at the park, versus right now it really is, I'm here to get in the water, and there's not really opportunities to just hang out and enjoy the view or the adjacency. And they're improving the trail connection, the sidewalk connections from this major access point to downtown. They are going to be driving that opportunity for folks to be downtown and go to the Blue Hole, be at the Blue Hole, and come downtown. For Georgetown, the river is the reason they exist. They were established as the place with fresh, safe water. And so the river is an integral part of their history. They are also in this downtown master plan looking at how they can add more shade in public spaces, add more trees, encourage more canopies on downtown businesses, on the buildings, and they are going to be expanding their sidewalks from 10 feet to 30 feet, again, facilitating planting more trees, adding more seating, allowing for more sidewalk dining, more business use of the sidewalk, and essentially giving businesses more opportunity to sell, but also creating more opportunities for people to stay longer and enjoy more of the businesses and create more community in the downtown district. There's a variety of ways to measure the impact of these sorts of investments in downtown. Certainly, Placer AI data can help you look at from before and after investments and seeing how your visitation length of time was affected. But you can also have more informal things like in Georgetown, there's a coffee shop associated with their public library that had a seating area with no shade and nobody used it. And after the investment in providing shade occurred, they tangibly counted the folks who were now staying and utilizing that space. In 2023, just in the month of August, there were 8 days over 100, and there were 2 months of almost 100 in this central Texas area. And the sales tax decreased by 8% during those hot, extremely hot months. Summer and hot times happens everywhere, more severe in some places than others. But even in Missouri, you guys are dealing with more hot weather, and everything we can do to help folks see the downtown as this oasis that, yes, I still want to go there and hang out is going to be great for your revitalization and your length of stay for sure. So what if you can buy those vacant lots? What if the city could buy the vacant lots and make them into a park? This is an example in Elgin, Texas, another accredited Main Street community, as is Georgetown, and Georgetown also is a GAMSA winner. They purchased 4 city blocks from Union Pacific Railroad and over 12 years developed it into a 2-block park adjacent to an existing small park in downtown. They did long-term planning to help figure out what this was going to look like and how they were going to do it through the Sustainable Places Project with their Council of Governments, with their COG. And today the space hosts an accessible playground, play sculpture, native landscaping, a zip line, a merry-go-round, bobble bridge, interactive pump and creek for the kids to play in the water. And it is a destination for all ages and is clearly showing a visitation increase in downtown and increasing length of stay. It also created a venue for event space that's used by the city and by local community groups to implement activity downtown. And so here's our last part for my section today, community engagement. All these great ideas and inspirational projects are awesome, but what's right in your community? What does your community want to see happening, and what are you working on as a Main Street program? You obviously need to involve everyone in your community in helping decide on major improvements like this, and even small activities you want to have overall community buy-in. So this is not an exhaustive list, but is just meant to remind you of the many groups that need to be invited to participate. And are there other groups like garden clubs and the Juneteenth organizations, art associations? Depending on your project, you need small scale or large scale community involvement. You need to look at your demographics and how will you reach out to the different pockets of people in your community. You want to share opportunities with them more than just an electronic survey so that they can participate in helping choose. This is an example of selecting playground equipment in a park expansion where folks just got to go up and vote with their stickers. Here's an example of using projected images to decide what the mural on that wall is going to be. Here are the options, and the community gets to vote. When you do things like this, doing group interaction, again, where people are getting to vote on things, lets you have deep conversations, but it also can be very manageable on your part, where the choices fit what you're programmatically trying to do and what your budget allows. On my part, I'm going to close with a couple books that provide engaging, page-turning perspectives on urban development. And I am glad to be here this morning. Happy to take some questions.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, let me click stop share here.
Oh, perfect.
Good job, Amy.
Yes,
Oh,
thank
thanks so much, Kayla.
you.
I think a couple of questions.
Yeah, so we do have a couple questions, but we do have some time for some questions if you want to pop them in the chat there. The first question I had, and you kind of answered it at the end, was what are some early, easy first steps as people are considering doing some of these projects that you had mentioned there? Is there something that they should focus on?
Right.
No barrier of
Sure, absolutely. I would say the place to start is with your businesses doing potted plants, your volunteers coming into the district and helping with cleanup on a regular basis, and remembering that cleanup includes the alleys as well as the storefronts. Considering something like a golden broom or a golden dustpan award for your businesses to encourage them, just even with the sweeping up and making sure that if they usually come in the back door, they remember to come in the front door and see what does my customer see as I'm arriving. But those are really low cost elements. And even doing things with planters, the self-watering planters placed periodically in your district. Those kind of things I would say are a good place to start. And education, helping the businesses and the property owners understand why we need to be doing this and making our downtown feel like the living room of our community.
I love that. I think we discussed it earlier. I worked with a lot of newer Main Street communities, and so they're always like, what are some easy first steps that I can do that I can then build on incrementally with it? So I think that's a fantastic the first easy step there. So thank you. And the other question that we had is what can be the municipality's role and the Main Street organization's role in streetscape and these kinds of green initiatives? We talk about Main Street is a public-private partnership, and so what should be the city's role in this type of development, depending on what the project is? And what can Main Street programs be, specifically like a streetscape or a larger green initiative type of project?
Well, so depending on your Main Street organization's financial capacity, you can be a really significant player at the table with the municipality and helping build those partnerships for what sort of grant resources can be associated with the project, so that it's not just the municipality issuing bond dollars to do it, as an example. Generally speaking, there are grant dollars that come to the table for that type of work. And whether it's the Main Street organization that applies for those in partnership with the municipality or the municipality, on your part, you need to start with the planning effort so that whether it's a downtown master plan or if it's we just want to look at the routes through downtown and we just want to prioritize the sidewalks that are in most need of replacement or the ADA curb ramp areas that are a priority to be improving. In some cases, now that the municipality sees this as a priority, a concern for this overall business district reinvestment that's generating sales tax, generating property tax, they then can perhaps add it to regular street improvement projects that they're already doing. It doesn't have to be just a huge downtown streetscape project, potentially, as you phase into bigger projects.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy. Now we're going to turn to Larry Lucas with Colorado Main Street. And so I'll let him share his screen and I'll let Gayla do an introduction of him.
Okay, so more introduction on Larry. Larry is actually a licensed architect, historic preservationist, a certified passive house consultant. But for us, he is the Main Street architect for Colorado Main Street program. He leverages over 14 years of experience with Main Street property owners and community groups to drive sustainable development. His recent work includes developing the Heritage Energy Program, which integrates preservation with environmental sustainability. There's a lot of big words here. Larry focuses on empowering local governments, preservationists, and property owners to create greener and healthier communities. So Larry, thank you for being here. We'll let you kick yours off.
Great. Well, thanks for having me this morning, Gayla and Ben. It's nice to, and it's great to follow up Amy too. This has been a great presentation so far. This morning, I want to talk with you guys a little bit more on the specific level of our Main Street buildings. You know, we all know that Main Street was built from historic preservation and leads to economic development, but how do we make these buildings even greener? First thing to think about is that historic preservation is the original green. I mean, things were built when there were not active mechanical systems to heat and cool our buildings, really. It reduces the demand for land and materials. We actually save the energy that's been input into these wonderful resources and continue that instead of disposing of it and building new, for example. And we also use local skills and labor and knowledge of the past to keep it moving forward. So it's sort of like the ultimate recycling that you can do is to recycle a whole building. I love to think about it that way. So when we think about a building, we have to think about it sort of in a logical progression as we move through to get the most bang for the buck when we decide to do an energy efficiency project. First thing we think about is, number one, it's a historic building, typically, or it's older and it has some character defining features that makes it historic. You know, things like the pressed tin ceiling or the transom windows or things like that. You know, so we want to protect those elements. And then the next thing that we need to think about is that a building is not just, it's not just getting a better air conditioner. You know, let's think about why we may need a bigger air conditioner or a better air conditioner. You know, is it just less efficient? Are there other things that we can do? We have to see the building as this combination of all the systems working together efficiently. And then how do we do that? And that's what I'm going to lead you through today. So one system impacts others. So identifying weaknesses is number one, then prioritizing the work. And then obviously we want to capitalize on any available incentives that there are. The outcomes that we can expect from doing a good energy efficiency project is we can have increased property values and historic authenticity. We can get new revenue from customers and higher rent. You know, we're going to have higher occupant comfort. Folks will want to linger longer. Decreased operating expenses, that's big. Decreased greenhouse gas emissions, that's something that's increasingly more important. And it may be even more important to certain people in your districts. And then you actually will need less money for further project funding because you're actually going to be saving money on your bottom line when you increase your efficiency on your systems. So first off, you know, these buildings were built to last. We know that, and we can compare it to like a modern day box restaurant or something like that that's meant to last only 40 years typically. They're still here after 100 plus years and often longer. Let's think about what's inherent to these buildings that makes them good. Like, how did people used to heat and cool themselves whenever we didn't have, you know, an active air conditioning system or things like that? Well, they would open the windows. You know, these windows were not meant to be painted shut. We need to like restore them, and we need to make them where we can open them again to get a cross ventilation through the building. And, you know, double hung windows are meant to be lowered from the top actually, or raised from the bottom, depending on how you want the draft to pull through the room. Transom windows on the picture to the right top, that's showing some transom windows above a retractable awning. Those allow light to get deeper into the space so that you can actually, you know, say, read a book at a comfortable in natural light at some distance from the front. So you have usable light that you can capture more. So if those are covered, you know, let's think about how to uncover those. High ceilings, you know, is something in addition to transoms that helps the light go deeper, but also helps stratify hot air, like in the summer. You know, you guys have some warm summers, so the hot air will rise to the top, and you can keep the cooler air will be at the bottom, and then you can use the ceiling fan to reverse that in the winter so that you can push the hot air back down. Brick walls, they're very massive, often, 16, 20 inches thick or thicker. These walls actually, they don't insulate, but they provide sort of a thermal lag. They allow for, when it's hot outside, they allow for that heat to move through slower towards the inside, which heat always moves towards cold. And then at night, when it cools back down, that heat escapes back to the outside. And, and it's opposite in the winter, to hold the heat in and allow it to move slowly and not really heat the exterior too fast. And also retractable awnings. These are great because you can let the sun in the winter and get that daylighting that you also want while getting some of the sun's heat. So improving operations, that's sort of number one in our three-part process that I want to lead you guys through. The first thing that you want to do before you do any energy efficiency project, especially one where you're looking at replacing systems in the end, is you want to perform an energy audit and sort of benchmark where your building is today. So an energy audit, often you have a utility that will come in and provide these sort of at a decreased cost. There may be a match or something like that. And if not, it's, like, I think our home energy audit was around $1,500, and for a Main Street building, I can't imagine it being any more than that. So, having that done by a certified professional, they'll actually locate and identify all the air leakage. Air leakage is one of the primary reasons that we lose energy in these older buildings. So, we're going to focus on that later. Then the portfolio manager, this is an EPA tool. It's free. You can Google this. If you have a commercial building, this is wonderful because it will compare your commercial building's energy use based on your last 12 months of bills to other buildings in similar scale and square footage and type across the country. And it's really great. And you can actually track your improvements through your decreased energy bills on this tool as you do them. So it's great to get a baseline before you start. Conservation, this is just leading down the chain. Like, how do we approach this? Occupant behavior is often the best way to save energy in a building. Adopting power saving strategies for yourself and your employees to think about, do we need to heat, 68 degrees all winter long inside, or can we get a programmable thermostat and actually have that set to come on an hour before I come in to warm up from the 55 or 50 back up to the 68, so that we're not heating all night. Same thing with lighting. And I'll get to lighting in just a minute. Maintenance, proactive maintenance, on an annual basis. I know that on the Missouri Main Street resources on the website, there is a document, I think, called Keeping Up Appearances that talks about seasonal maintenance. And that's wonderful. You guys should check that document out. That's a good way to think about maintenance, because after a winter, we've had some freezing and thawing, and maybe some caulking has cracked. Some paint joints have come loose and things like that. So it's a good time to look at those, as well as brick and other things. But in the summer, that's the time that we can actually do some roofing projects and some other things when we end up with a little bit less rain. So thinking about how you're going to do your maintenance throughout the year is important. And then, your heating and air conditioning systems, you should have those looked at, every 4 years or so. It's important to have a professional come in, clean them, make sure they're operating at the right efficiency, have the right amount of refrigerant and things like that in them. So now that we've looked at conservation, let's move down the logical progression here to how do we reduce energy loads. And I'm going to focus on just a couple. We're going to get more into some of the higher end things, but lighting is really your number one slam dunk. And you guys probably already know this, but LED lighting is far superior in terms of using less energy than really anything else that we've got. One thing I'll say about LED is it's great. I actually bought some fluorescent fixtures for my garage, and they have a selectable option. If you'll see the photo on the right, you can select the color temperature that you wish to use. And so where you may be in a restaurant and you want food to look a little bit more, use that red light to make food look a little more delicious, you might use a warmer tone. You might need a brighter tone, or more something closer to daylight, like on the right side of the picture, to see fine details. Like if you sold Legos or something, or have things that require small, focusing in closely with your eyes, you need more bright light. So it's great to get those fixtures that are selectable if you have that opportunity. A lot of times for LED lighting, there are utility incentives to upgrade your lighting if you still haven't done that. Even just a few fixtures. I mean, why not? Let's go ahead and get that up to date. It does save you a lot of money in the long run. And then something you don't think about is if you have a shoe store, you know, why not have an occupancy sensor that as you walk back there, it kicks on the lights. And then 5 minutes later, it'll shut the lights off automatically, because you may not need that to be on all day long. And then also, if you're working late at night on books or something like that, and you don't have a large open space, let's just get a little desk lamp or something and use the desk lamp to light what we need to see instead of leaving all the lights in the shop on. So just really being cognizant of like what we're doing with lighting is important. And then the building envelope. This is sort of the big one. You know, lighting's an easy slam dunk, but then building envelope, there's a couple levels of alteration that we're going to talk about. First off, the minimum alteration that we can do, the things that don't really require that much extensive work, or work that would essentially potentially alter the character defining features of a building that we have to be super careful with, is, you know, number one, like I said, air leakage is big. Sometimes utilities, or maybe even your state energy office, will have programs for weatherization, to either hire professionals to come out at a reduced rate, or you know, you can get those weather stripping kits that may have enough in it for, you know, weather stripping a door or a couple windows or something like that. And those are great. You know, learn how to do that. It's just a little bit tedious, but it really will pay off. I mean, having that drafty upper floor window that just goes all year round, you know, if you have somebody renting that space to live, you know, it's a little bit uncomfortable. And also they're going to be running their heater more in the winter. So can we fix that? Sure. It just takes a little time. And then it's installing storm windows. Now that same leaky window, one way you can really mitigate this, and we'll talk more about windows in a minute, but we can actually use what's called an interior storm window, which is essentially a plexiglass sheet with some like a neoprene gasket around it and a couple of handles. And you push that into your window casement when you need actually that buffer. And I know you guys have hot summers and cold winters. So, you know, you could potentially leave this in all year round and then pull it out when you want to open the window or when you need to clean the glass or something like that. They're fantastic. I'll show you more about that in just a minute. Also insulating your basements or crawl spaces. If you have a basement or a crawl space under an old wood floor, often insulating that perimeter right below the wood floor where it may have contact to outside air is very important. One thing to note on this though, Main Street buildings are fantastic. We have very little that we have to actually touch when we talk about the envelope, because most of them, right, are like slices of bread. They're on insides of blocks. So they share walls with other owners and properties next door. And that creates a condition between those two shared walls where there's really zero loss or zero gain of energy. So you're not heating or cooling all that wall area. And that's really most of your wall area. Now we're just talking about a roof and bracket front walls that we have to think about. And that's great. So you already have this really great inherent efficiency built in there. And so thinking about a little bit more alteration, something that's a bigger scale project. Let's say that we've, for some reason or another, you've bought a building and it's been gutted or something, and you have the opportunity to add insulation to the walls. Well, wall insulation is tricky, especially with brick. You can actually activate moisture in your wall by putting too much insulation in the wrong location. So you may not need a full amount of, you know, insulation on the interior as you think. What can happen is that, as you see the diagram on the right, as warm air that carries moisture, which warmth does, moves towards the outside, which it will in the winter, the temperature lowers inside the wall cavity, and it will create, at the dew point temperature, it will create condensation. So we don't want that to happen at the wrong place. And it's important to talk with a mechanical engineer or a licensed architect or someone that has some knowledge of wall systems and how water and moisture move through them before you decide to insulate. With wood framed walls, it's just like a house essentially. So if you have a wood framed back wall or front wall in your building, it can treat that very similar to what the code allows today. You can also think about an interior vestibule. That's more for Colorado. We have, you know, real cold winters up in the mountain towns. You may want to step into a space that mitigates that interior exterior temperature between the inside and outside. Replacing windows. You know, I'll say this with a big grain of salt, is that essentially don't replace the windows unless they are unfixable. Like if you can't restore or repair them, you would never think about this, at least in my preservationist point of view. And then installing an insulated roofing system. When we replace our roofs, it's really smart to get what they call an insulated roof system, where you put some dense foam underneath the top layer of your new roofing, and it will actually just really help offset your energy bills. And it's also great for and you will put on top in your climate, you'll put on top of that what they call a cover board, which will actually protect the roof from hail. So windows. Okay, this is the big one. Everybody always worries about their windows. Again, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. A lot of times you can use an interior storm window, and I want to show you about that. On line 3 and 4 of this chart, you're going to see that it shows an exterior and an interior storm panel. Well, just to the left, in the U value and SHGC is solar heat gain coefficient. Those numbers are specific to the performance of the window. Now, if you look down at the bottom to line 8, you're going to see those numbers are almost identical if you put in an interior or exterior storm window to add that extra layer of buffer, that extra air. Air is your best insulator typically with a window. That's why you have airspace in between 2 panes of an insulated window. Last thing we want to talk about is really just upgrading the systems. Hey, we've thought about our conservation. We've gotten our, everybody on the same track about setting the thermostat back at night. We're careful with our lighting loads. We turn computers off at night. We do all the little things that we can do. Now it's like, well, we have someone, again, a professional, ideally, and it may not cost too much because most buildings are very simple, just to say, help me run a load. I don't necessarily just want, or a good licensed contractor can help you with this too. Help me run a load calculation now based on my improved insulation on the roof, my interior storm windows, and all the weather stripping that I've done to figure out, if I can use a smaller air conditioner than what I had before. And often you can. So with your heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, again, look to your utility, look to your state energy office, other partners that maybe help with energy efficiency for small businesses. See if there's any tune-ups available. Have them look at the age of the equipment and see if it's worth the bang for the buck to replace it with newer efficient equipment to see what the payback will be over a period of time. I want to show you, I just wanted to bring this up on the photo to the right. A lot of times people have those drop ceilings in the buildings, and they have above, there's really nice tin historic ceiling, like there was in this building before they took the drop ceiling out. What they're showing in this is that you can actually install ductwork that's not unattractive. You can install this spiral steel ductwork. I'm sure you've seen it. You probably don't think about it, and that's good because you can actually enjoy the height of the original ceiling, all the benefits, the inherent heating and cooling strategies that it has, and then also celebrate the historic materials, which is a character defining feature of this space. So with reduced loads, you can actually downsize and upgrade. One thing to think about is, do you need a furnace? Nowadays, they have different stage furnaces. One called the 2-stage, which is more towards the higher end. But what it does is it uses kind of a lower fan speed just during your typical heating loads during the day to keep things at a pleasant temperature all day. But if you say you need to preheat a space because your thermostat kicks on an hour before you come back in for work in the morning, and you heat the space up real quick, it can actually have it'll say that it understands the differential, and it kicks on a bigger fan and more power to the heat, and it will actually heat the space up faster. So you're not just kicking on your heater and turning it off. Same thing, and there are also more efficient air conditioning systems. So hot water, this is a big one. We all, not all of us, but a lot of us just have a water tank in the back of our building. And, maybe it's a shoe shop, or you sell clothing or art supplies or something like that. Do you really need to have a water tank that's losing energy all day long, all year round, to the atmosphere surrounding it? The heat just eventually goes out. It only has so much insulation. Why not just put in a small point of use water heater underneath the sink? If you just have one hand sink, really think about this, because you can save the space from that that big water tank, and over the time it's going to save you money. And then also you can use solar hot water. I grew up in Southeast Oklahoma. In our home, growing up, we had hot water panels on the roof, and it heated our system, our interior water system, and it was really great. I mean, gosh, the water would be like boiling hot if you weren't careful. So that's an option. And of course, you place the panels on the roofs where they're really not obvious, ideally, and you look at your local codes and make sure that all works. And in a similar fashion, we can have renewable power. I believe this is on a roof in Silverton, Colorado. Having solar on site does a lot of things. Mainly, it just it saves you money on your bills by offsetting your time of use. So you can actually, with a net metering system, that means that the solar panels are connected to your metering system, so that any excess energy that you produce in a live manner is feeding back to the grid. Okay, so what happens in this case is that you may even accumulate a credit with your energy company, and they could pay you at the end of the year some amount of money if you've used more, if you provided more energy than you've used. It's often hard to do with our smaller Main Street buildings, but you can definitely offset your loads. And also, it's really kind of making a statement about, hey, I really care about the environment. I'm gonna take that step and do solar. We have Costco's in Colorado, but often it's smart, if you know a good electrician, just to go ahead and purchase the panels using some kind of a cost savings card or airline bucks or something like that yourself, instead of necessarily going with one of these companies that comes by, knocks on the door, and tries to sell you panels. Because there's a lot of the markup on the panels and things like that is significant. And if you purchase them like through a Costco or someone like that who does sell them, you can actually realize savings twice. And then you can actually have somebody that knows how to put them in, do it for you at a lower cost. And then if you have needs, like you have a pharmacy and you have refrigerators that need to have power all the time, you probably already have a battery system to back those things up, but it's a good idea to think about that to provide continuous power when you need it. Okay, now shifting gears, I just want to talk about a project that's sort of in the works right now here in Colorado. So Victor, Colorado is situated at about 10,000 feet up on a high mountain pass in what they call the Banana Belt region, which gets a lot of warmth, even though it's high. It's on a downslope of the Rocky Mountains heading east. So it enjoys like kind of moderate climate. Snow melts fast. This is a picture before the 1899 fire that wiped out a lot of this town when there was a population of over 30,000 people, most of them involved in gold mining or silver mining in some way. After the fire, it changed things significantly. But today, I just want to show you, it's still a gold mining town. You can see Victor sits at the bottom of the large open mine that essentially changed the landscape. But they do get some benefit from the mine. They receive, the mine buys water from them, and they also have some other things. It's a great cash revenue thing for the town. It's just interesting to see that there's such a big operation still going for gold. So Victor has a little bit more going for it than just gold mining. They're actually, they're at the end of a power line. They don't have a loop. And so essentially whenever there's a blackout or the wire gets cut on the way up to Victor, which is like 30 miles from the nearest other town, you will actually lose power. And they lost power for a period of days. And it would hit on and off for up to 12-hour stretches a couple of years ago. So they decided to take action. And they also have a vision for making their downtown 100% net zero at some point. So what they've done is they've gone and talked to the Colorado Energy Office, which you guys have energy performance contracting in Missouri too. And it's called an energy performance contract. And what you can do with as a public entity or a school district and other entities like that is you can essentially borrow money after some engineering has been done to identify strategies. And they look at all the buildings in the entire district, all the facilities, including the water treatment plants, the fire station. They have a hockey rink in Victor. All these different things like what uses energy. And then they start to think, well, where can we save the most energy? And how can we cover all these other ones that we can't really gain in? You can't really increase the efficiency of a hockey rink. You can provide shading and things like that. But all that to say, there's a lot of calculations that go on through something called an investment grade energy audit. And that's where they actually look at the entire portfolio of energy use in the community. And then they create sort of a cost of magnitude to decide like, what is the loan term that we're going to take out and what will pay for itself through the energy savings that are realized over the loan term. It's a fantastic way. And we're actually looking at this to do a couple of big projects right now. So first off, the original power transformer station in Victor, the Power and Light building, built in 1900, is still standing today. The town now owns it. They're looking for an adaptive use to turn this into a community resiliency center and solar learning center for the region. This actually would house people when the power is off for extended periods to come charge phones, to get warm, for the community to warm up a big pot of stew, and folks to, and then also as a STEM learning environment, in addition to some offices for local businesses. It's a pretty large building. I think it's around 20,000 square feet, counting all the levels. It goes down into the hill. Here's a picture of what the Power and Light building built was looking like. I believe this is in the early 30s or late 20s here. And it shows the power coming out of where the insulators were housed back in these little recesses. They actually got power from a hydroelectric plant back then. And at the time that this building lit downtown with street lighting, downtown was lit in Victor before San Francisco, which just shows you the power of all the money that was in Victor, with all, with the incredible amount of gold that people were finding. And also the gold rush happened earlier in California. So they were in a different bubble, if you will. Not that this all didn't happen around the same time, but I just think that's an interesting fact. So there's 3 phases to what we decided to do in Victor, and working with this energy performance or this energy service company that does the energy performance contract. They're called ESCOs, and they're essentially building energy engineers. And they come in and they look at this portfolio of all the loads in the community, and they decide, like, how do we actually save energy in these buildings, number one, just like the strategy I just shared with you guys. But then number 2, we decided to adopt some grid connected energy systems to help offset the costs of all the energy improvements and all the other things that need to happen in the portfolio for the town. So all the town facilities are 100% net zero. So first of all, we're going to put emergency generation, which unfortunately has to be diesel or gas. In this case, I think it would be gas, for the city's pumping facilities for gasoline for their snowplows, for one, which went down a couple winters ago and caused major catastrophe. And then also for the water treatment center, so we can actually keep water pumping when we have power off. So we're going to implement that. And then next, we're going to work on the Power and Light building, which is the center bottom. And it's showing you a carport solar structure, which could be used for backing in trucks and things for a farmer's market and other activities that need shade. We're looking at a playground under part of that. And then the building above would benefit from 120% energy feedback. So we're going to create more power than we need. The excess goes back to the grid. They will get a check at the end of the year from Black Hills Energy, and it will save them energy. And I'm essentially on the top right, that's a look at an array, which would be sort of a second phase up at the pass. And that's the water treatment center there, or the water pumping station. This would offset all the loads for all the community facilities. And then there will be a large battery up there near those panels to provide some level of continuous operation to certain things. The pass is quite a ways from downtown, so it's not a connected microgrid completely. Here's a few ideas. I was working with some university students from University of Colorado, Denver, and I developed the floor plans for the property, on how we could create this indoor STEM space for learning. And there's an exterior play pad out there that's a water feature in the summer, but obviously not in the winter in Victor because it's freezing most of the time. And it's interesting because the concept is that the teeter-totter and the head frame, or the mining frame for the drill bores that they have sitting all around town. It's a beautiful place still historically. Those would actually generate power in some ways. So creatively, we could see like what's generating power at any given time. And it could be a lot of fun. And then you can see at the bottom left is a concept potentially for a brewery, but it really is for anything. And it's showing that solar is some on the roof. This was a student's concept. But all that to say, the building is wonderful. It has a lot of attributes to it that leads it to be able to be used for a multi-use community space. And, we just really hope for them to be able to realize their vision in the coming years. That's part of my job as a state staff, is to assist them connecting the dots between state and local programs, incentives for this. So this is a strategy that we developed at Colorado Main Street to essentially, and it's just the list to the left, to lead you through how do you actually make a building pay for this. So historically designated, you can qualify for tax credits, correct? Then you actually apply for these and move forward with your plans because you need to get that in, what you're going to do first. A lot of these energy efficiency things can work in just fine if you have a good preservation architect helping you. Reduce your energy consumption. You're going to need upfront capital. Sometimes there's low interest loan pools, but we have a green bank in Colorado. You guys may have something similar, or banks that will loan lower rates for like solar and things. You'll want to get that to do your work, like your construction loan if you need extra money. Then you receive the tax credits and you sell them when you can. I think you might be able to sell your state one, and then you pay down your loans, re-amortize or adjust your loan schedule to get a lower monthly payment on that construction loan, and then you're going to get energy savings every month going forward from the solar and or all the energy upgrades that you've done. And so that's essentially, in a nutshell, a way that you can realize greater efficiency in your buildings.
Larry, thank you so much. And so as people put some of these questions in the chat, I do have one question for you. What is something that a Main Street organization can do to talk to building owners about some of these energy efficiency types of initiatives that I know you talked about at the beginning, whether it's the transom windows or the awnings or the ceilings there? How in your experience at the state coordinating level have local Main Street programs been able to talk to building owners on some of these different initiatives? Do they start with something and then just lead on to other things, or what do they usually start with, and what does that conversation look like?
Well, there's a couple of ways that you can approach like overall sustainability in your district. A town called Ridgeway, one of our main streets, small town. There was a schoolgirl that wanted to ban plastic bags. Well, guess what? Now it's a state law. There's no plastic bags in groceries and in convenience stores. So that actually started from a small movement, but their town is very green as well. And it's really just sort of the ethos of the community is to do these kinds of programs, the farmers market, some of the other things that Amy touched on, make that available in the public light. And then beyond that, specifically talking to building owners, once you've built kind of this ethos towards wanting to be a more sustainable place, especially as an organization, you're going to talk to your town. You're going to work with them. What do you have for recycling? How do we push that? How do we make things bigger? And then at the building owner level, it's really just about educating them. Everything happens so granularly, but also doing local trainings, having, maybe you guys speak to this locally. You create an initiative where you could actually have something that gets into each community that shares kind of the good news of all the things you can do with buildings. I think if they had a checklist or something like that, that would be wonderful, kind of showing what some ROIs are on lighting and things like that, because it really does make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Larry, thank you so much. We're going to move to Carolina and Joplin now. So I'm going to share my screen.
All right, so we're going to do introduction. What a great picture. So Carolina is, again, she's co-owner of Neal Group Construction. They also have other subsidiary companies, but all within the mission that is to do with sustainability with restoring historic properties. They have been on the forefront of sustainability development. Their work has transformed the face of Joplin. We believe that. We've seen it firsthand. And we champion all that they do, and hopefully continue to do. But they've been turning century-old buildings into vibrant hubs for business and community growth. Dedicated to reusing and recycling nationally registered historic properties, and also working in economic revitalization of Route 66, which we're getting ready to celebrate. And we're giving a nod to it this year with our state conference. But in collaboration with their team, they have successfully created spaces where new entrepreneurs can thrive, new neighbors can meet each other, all while honoring the commitment to the planet and the community heritage. So we're excited to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate very much the invitation to participate in this webinar. And thank you, Larry and Amy. Excellent presentations. And I want to just kind of follow up what they said and show you the why. Why we believe in green historic preservation and why we do it. So let's move to the next slide, please. We started this process on 2004 when we bought this building that you see on your left side, the Columbian Block Building, 1893. The original facade is in the bottom of the slide. And it was really sad to see that gone. But anyway, this was the first private historic preservation project happening in downtown Joplin at the time. We spent 3 years transforming the building and learning about it. And pretty much this building became the ground zero for historic preservation here in our town, because after we finished, other property owners and also the city understood the potential that we have by rehabilitating historic buildings in our town. Next, please. The next slide will show you the first wow moment. I call it wow moment because it's the moment when you realize what you are doing has meaning, a bigger meaning than just doing the work per se. We realized that preserving historic buildings creates a circular economy. During the process of restoring this building, a neighbor came every single day for 3 years telling us stories about the building. And I chose these pictures about the courtroom because he told us that many people were married in that building during World War II. So I went to the library and I did all the research, and true enough, 6,000 couples were married there. And historic preservation really provides a sense of identity to the town and creates a change in this linear economy thinking of making, using, disposing to a more reusing and recycling circular economy point of view. We finished, we really realized that one of our family members was married in that building. And the one moment for us was really understanding, like Larry was saying, that's the sustainable life cycle of building materials it has to be changed. We need to change our mindset. We are, as a company, taking off the demolition and the disposal part, and we are just retrofitting and reusing the materials that are already within the building. 2020 COVID pandemic shows us that we live in a world where we depend of other parts of the world to source many of the materials for construction, and having 60% of the materials in one specific building already there makes the historic preservation process financially feasible and less risky for all. And it takes 10 to 80 years, according to the National Trust of Historic Preservation, for a building today to pay the debt of their construction. And these buildings are already 100 plus years. So I call them debt-free for the planet. They already paid the debt of what it costs to build them. And it makes sense for us to really understand the importance of reusing and recycling them. The moment, next please, the one moment number 2 for me was after the tornado in 2011. For us, we understood that preserving historic buildings also creates resilience series. 2 examples here. The Griffin building on your right side, we finished that project, the biggest project in this town, 6 floors, during the 2008 economic crisis, was the only construction project going on here. We finished that months before the tornado happened. The property owner bought that property literally 2 months, 3 months before the tornado. When the tornado happened, Many businesses lost their offices and their facilities, and in less than a month, that whole building was filled with tenants. And also many of the agencies that came to help with the rescue and recovery efforts were housed there. And at that moment showed me the fact that if you are ready, if your properties and historic buildings are restored and ready to go, when some catastrophe like a tornado happen, you can be more resilient. The second example there is the St. Mary's School building. They completely, you see the picture over there, that the school was completely gone after the tornado. The Catholic school system had this two-story building as a warehouse. They hired us to transform that warehouse into a school in 8 weeks. Because it's a very small school system, they really needed to be out for the summer, but ready to go by the fall. And that was the hardest time in my life, working super hard, but we made it happen. And now is the middle school to keep being used for that. And so those two examples tell you that green historic preservation makes sense because it creates a more resilient city. Next, I want to take a moment here to share a aha moment of one person that probably Larry knows about, is Bob Berkebile. Is one of the architects in Kansas City. I saw this presentation a few years ago, and Bob Berkebile had an aha moment when in July of 1981, one of his projects collapsed and 114 people died and 216 people were very injured. But what happened for him is that after that moment, he really started questioning what is the impact of the design of the designs that architects do for the people that they intend to serve. And after that, a situation for Bob was an instrumental person to create what today is called the U.S. Green Building Council and the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design Rating System, which is all the specific points that Larry was talking about, how to make buildings more greener. Because created a committee for environmental within the architect organization and the living building standards for operating of buildings. So I want to tell about Bob a little bit because it's connected to my story too. Next, please. So in 2000, after the tornado in 2012 and 2013, I had the opportunity to do my master program in the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy and be a student of Professor Muma. Professor Muma won the 2007 Nobel Prize with Vice President Al Gore. And Professor Muma was really interested in what I was doing. And he asked me two important questions. Do you know how much CO2 each historic building your company has restored safe to the planet? That was the first question. And the second question he asked me is, do you know Bob? And to both of those questions, I have to answer, no idea. No, I don't know Bob and no idea what I'm doing. So he really explained me what was the triple bottom line approach of the US GBC. And we need to start thinking about our developments and our downtowns for people first, for planning second, and for profit too. And as Larry explained to us, it is possible to restore and rehab these historic properties by thinking about the people we are going to serve first, thinking about how we can help the planet by reusing all the resources that are within the building and restoring windows and creating more efficient systems. And it's also possible to do it in a profitable way. And one of the things that I came for me after he taught me was, any action that makes the planner healthier is better than no action at all. So because of that, next, in knowing that the current state of the world is kind of catastrophic. These are pictures of the fires in California, the earthquakes in Myanmar, this year floods in Kentucky, Joplin tornado pictures. It's really important to understand that the lack of action or the lack of interest in this process is going to affect us one way or another one. So next. So this is the warm moment number 3 that I want to share with you, and is the project, the herbal undertaking project that we did a few years ago. We finished up this project in 2018. And after having that opportunity to learn in my master program, and after having those 2 wow moments before, I came back to Joplin and said, okay, now we are doing historic restoration in a greenest way. And so this building used to look like that when we purchased it. Please go through the next slides. This was the roof. Next. Next, please. This was the interior, full of all kinds of environmental issues. A fire was there, all kinds of things next were found in this building and had to be cleaned up. The owners were hoarders, and we had a lot to clean up and environmental processes. We use brownfield tax credits to do these projects, and it really paid off. Next. That was the basement full of water. And so we need to clean up a lot of environmental issues, but we came with the idea to really create this project next to be the first historic rehabilitation project in downtown Joplin, Missouri that will have a LEED Gold certification. And I'm happy to inform that we finally got that in the books after a lot of process. But you can see the roof now has solar arrays. We use rebates to pay for or help us pay for this 72 kW of solar arrays there. You can see the high efficient systems that we incorporate into there. You can see the patio there has permeable pavers too. And next, we also create a partnership with Liberty Utilities, who is our utility company. They donate the electric vehicle charging station to us for free. We connect that to the solar arrays, and because it's the only electric charging station in again within the U.S. Department of Energy and Alternative Fuels Data Center. So we are there, and we are part of that big network that this country is creating in terms of charging stations and EV charging stations. Next. Like I said, there's many things that Larry discussed in his presentation that we use. For example, we create this green wall to give some shade to the process and plant very native plants during the summer. That wall really grows. During the winter, it's a very nice feature of the property too. Those are permeable pavers. All the water is collected also into the rainwater is collected into a couple of tanks that we put underneath the stairs in the back, and that water is reused to water the garden. We have a recycle center, so all the tenants in this building recycle paper, aluminum, plastic, cardboard, and all those go through the recycle center here in Joplin. And we also create a circular economy by reusing some of those materials. A lot of the materials that we have, you can see the wall of mosaics over there. Those are pieces of the samples of tiles, the leftover tile that we use for the bathrooms and the floors. I used to create some kind of arty piece right there in the recycle center. We try to be creative in the ways that we reuse materials and leftover materials as well. You can see in the bottom part the before and after of the staircase. That's the front of the building, the front entrance of the building to my office building. You see the green wall. We create this green wall with plants that are highly recommended by NASA to create, to clean the air. So this is constantly plants that are working year round, cleaning the air with inside and helping also cooling and the cooling and controlling the temperature. We have LED lighting throughout. The story about the LED lighting is we went to one of the manufacturers here locally and we told them, please create this type of LED lighting for this building with occupancy sensors too. So I use a little lamp because I work late all the time. So I use a little lamp in my desk. But this LED lighting was specifically designed for this building and also is the showcase for the company. So we did a partnership there and we create low cost for us to put this type of lighting here by creating that partnership. So this company comes and sells their product to other customers by using us as an example. We also did reuse all the concrete from the old driveway, that you see there in the patio, and we create those gabion benches over there for seating by reusing all this concrete that we took out from the previous driveway. Next. So as you can see in this specific example, it is possible to create a green, sustainable historic rehabilitation and bring more economic growth to the city. By reusing the solar power that we have in this building and another property close by, we have avoided the production of approximately 500 tons of CO2. And this is a little picture about what a ton of CO2 is in terms of measuring that process. But it is important for us to understand that by reusing all the materials, by reusing the building, by using LED lighting, using water features that create a savings in water consumption, by reusing the clay that is the brick clay that is part of characteristic of these buildings, we have avoided a hard contamination. By cleaning the building and all the contamination too, we have avoided more contamination and more CO2 in the atmosphere. Next. So finally, in 2019, I was able to meet Bob in Kansas City. And Bob Berkeby is a wonderful person, the father of green building, I will call him that way. And his philosophy is that we need to decrease our...
I think your audio cut out there for a little bit.
Yes, sorry.
There we go, no problem.
Change your downtowns and create your downtowns as a better place for all to live and for the planet as well. So my question for you is, what is your aha moment through this presentation, and how can you really bring some of these initiatives to your town? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love seeing all this into practice. Good job, you guys.
Thank you.
Good job.
Carolina, I did have a question. You talked a little bit about being LEED certified and going through that process, but what is the process of becoming certified? What are some of the requirements for that, and what do you go through in order to get that?
Okay, it's a long, in our case, was a long process. And so the first thing I'm going to say is if you want to get a certification, well, the first thing I'm going to say is historic preservation can be green and you don't need the certification to really make an impact, okay? The certification, I want the certification because it's a way not only to market the property and to add value to the property, but also to bring the green movement to the city. Cities in the east and the west coast of this country really use USGB green building console standards to build everything today. So I wanted that to be part of the Midwest. And Kansas City is really big into it, but Joplin, Missouri is not what I call a green town. So I want the certification for that, just kind of to try to bring that into town. The certification takes time, and the first thing I will say is you need to choose your consultant right, your right architect and your right consultant, so the process got smoothly. We had a problem in that sense. We chose a consultant that really took a long time to perform what we needed, and that makes the process of the certification longer and also more expensive. It's an expensive certification, so you have to think about it. But as I show in the slides at the bottom, there is a list of standards that can be easily accessed by anyone. And if you follow those standards, you can really bring the same impact without having the certification. The certification is just like a nice gold star. So you did it.
Cherry on top.
You performed, but it's not necessary. But it also gives a little bit more credibility to the work. And as a construction company, we wanted to have that part as well.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Amy, Larry, and Carolina. I'm going to turn it over to Gayla before we finish out this presentation, because I know she wants to talk a little bit about the housing bill that we are trying to put through the legislature right now and what you can do. So I'll turn it over to her.
Yes. So yes, thank you. Thank you all for the great presentations. And it will be a really, really good one for people to come back in and listen to, and us to be able to use in different trainings that we do. So we truly appreciate your all's contribution and what you guys are doing locally here in Joplin, across the nation, and of course in Colorado. So thank you all very much. We've been working on a bill for a while now. This is the second year of working on this bill, but it ties into exactly what we're talking about here. And that's the Revitalizing Missouri Downtowns and Main Street Act. So for our rural community, this would give us a tax credit. The property only 25 years old or older, and it could be layered with a national tax credit, the historic preservation tax credit. So we can do the layering with this, but it would be dollars set aside for our rural communities and $12.5 million in tax credits. And then for our larger urban districts, it's a total of $50 million in total. And so there is work right now being done on maybe lowering that so we can share some of those tax credits for other programs that are being talked about in state legislature right now as we speak, because there's only so many tax credits, of course, to go around. But as you all know, it's getting harder and harder to take care of our historic buildings. And we need to invest in the people that are doing that and give them the tools to be able to do this. And so you all know that our buildings are the fabric of our downtown and of our communities. And so anybody that is listening and will be listening to this webinar, we need your support on this Senate Bill 35.
And
Thank you.
in every community that's been in, housing has been probably the number one issue. And so this bill absolutely helps to activate those second, third stories of our buildings, but also solve an entire other issue. And so it can multifaceted solve a lot of issues for our downtowns, getting people in the sidewalks and also helping to change that housing issue in our community. So,
and Ben brings up the best part of this. It is a housing, but also if on the main floor, you know, of us are doing right sizing in our buildings. We have a main floor that's 3,000 square feet. We only need 1,000 of it maybe for retail or a service business. We can take that other 2,000 square feet with this bill on the main floor and turn it into housing. As long as we are giving that storefront to the sidewalk. And so it really would open us up to investing again in the property owners that own our buildings and our downtowns to have the dollars to help secure these buildings. So would love your all support on that. You guys, thank you all so very much. This was great. Hands off to you guys. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you guys.
Hey, have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Everybody have a good day.